Retro Warriors episode 262. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Why'd you say it weird this time?
I'm just, my brain stopped in that moment, and I panicked, and I was like, say his name, idiot! We do have housekeeping.
We've only done 261 of these by now. I understand you haven't figured out my name yet.
I'm sorry, who are you?
Exactly.
Where am I? What is... This isn't my dungeon. We do have housekeeping.
Yeah.
First up, check the episode description for timestamps to jump to the topic at hand. Also, this week is our thank you show where we thank all of the wonderful people by their real legal names that support us on Patreon, which you can also do at patreon.com/retrowarriors, and you get all kinds of cool stuff that I'm not going to enumerate right now because I'm going to probably do it later.
And they have to use their real names because it's actually illegal to use a fake name on a podcast.
Yeah, so anyone if any of these names are fake, the
going to jail.
Internet police are coming for you just as soon as they finish rounding up all those YouTube commenters anyway.
That's going to take eternity.
My week, I've been playing almost exclusively Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advanced.
I've heard of that.
It's by Camelot Software. Yes. It's at this point kind of a forgotten RPG. They made one on DS and it bombed really hard because it should have bombed because it was bad.
It's not forgotten. He's an assist trophy in Smash Brothers.
Oh my God! What? So was the girl from Drill Dozer. Like everyone's. And what I've learned, because we were talking last week about me and GBA and how much I love the GBA and I play it and I like it.
Yeah.
What I've learned is that, because I've maintained for a while now that I've come to the realization that I don't really love JRPGs.
Right.
And I have my exceptions, stuff that I do like, that I did enjoy. Obviously, I talk about it on the show. But as an overall genre, I think I've learned that I cannot just be like, oh, I like JRPGs. What I have learned is that everything I dislike about JRPGs, I'll put up with if I get to play it on a Game Boy Advance. Something about the Game Boy Advance gives me infinite patience for very long dialogue, overly complex classing and summoning systems, giant overworlds with no vehicles and very slow overland travel.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it is in Golden Sun because I'm having a blast with the game. I made it all the way to the end and then doubled back through the very long overworld, walking backwards through multiple dungeon sections because some points in the overworld you have to go backwards through zones, not just the overworld, to go collect some stuff I missed because I'm enjoying it that much.
Nice.
And I've put in, for whatever reason, I've also learned that I will play the Game Boy Advance SP specifically more than anything else because I can do it one-handed. As we've discussed, I have large hands. Yeah. Not even Earthbound style. I just can reach all the buttons with my thumb when I'm holding it in my left hand. Yeah.
Weird.
So I hold it the same way you would hold a Game Boy. I grip it by the side, but my thumb can reach every button.
Huh. Like on a smartphone.
Yeah, like the same way you use a smartphone. And then my ring finger, I can hit the right trigger with. That's the only thing I have to use my other button for. Holding it one-handed relatively securely. So people who are wondering how big my hands are, they're at least that big.
They're gorilla-sized.
I have these big, strong hands. They just look like big, strong hands, don't they? And so I've put... Because we talk a lot about how I struggle to find time to play games.
Right.
I've put almost 20 hours into Golden Sun in less than a week.
Nice.
Because I can play it while cooking, while vacuuming, while picking my daughter up, while taking care of my animals. I can just have my Game Boy Advance in my left hand. And my new system that I've worked out is that I do GBA left hand and my phone with a PDF of the guide open right hand.
Because that's totally sane and normal.
I hold them both in front of my face at the same time and navigate both with their respective thumb. It's a very weird system.
Right.
But for whatever reason, it has worked out just perfectly for me.
It's bizarre.
And so I've been honestly really enjoying Golden Sun. It really is an extremely impressive game for a GBA game.
Nice.
I did pick up the second one because it doesn't end. It just straight up like split. They split the game in half. They're like, we can't fit it on the cartridge. So it's like hardcore cliffhanger mode into the second game. And
that seems to be a recurring
data.
thing in JRPGs. A lot of them have done that over the years.
Yeah. But it absolutely an extremely impressive and extremely expansive JRPG for the Game Boy Advance.
I remember being really excited for it before it came out because it was Camelot, and that was the guys that did all the Shining Force games, and I enjoyed Shining Force, so I wanted to see what they were up to now that they were working with Nintendo instead of Sega, and then it came out, and like I started playing it, and I was like, you have to summon too often, and then I put it down and never picked it up again.
I will say that I do think the combat system in the game might end up being one of my favorite JRPG combat systems.
Nice.
I've not finished the first game, I've not started the second game, and I've not had time to ruminate on that extremely big claim.
Right.
But I think it might be. I really like how different it is from just traditional JRPG stuff. Nice. I really, really do. And I highly recommend the first game, and by extension the second game, because if you play the first game, you have to play second game because that's the second half of it.
Right.
But I've just been having a lot of fun playing that one-handed. My only complaint is that you have to hold the B button to run. So when I'm playing one-handed, I cannot run.
Well, we were still doing that in that era where instead of run being default, you had to hold the button for it.
Yeah.
Even that was a nicety given to us in the late 90s. Before that, we just had to walk everywhere.
It does have some weird dated JRPG stuff. Like, it doesn't have smart targeting. So, like, if you target someone and they die, then if someone else was targeting them, they'll just switch to defend mode.
Yeah.
Which I guess is better than, like, doing nothing. Right. But at the same time, it makes just mashing the A button to grind stuff not really a feasible option.
Yeah. It's also a problem I have.
Yeah, and I know there was the last game I played that did that was like one of the early Dragon Quests, I think.
Yeah,
and
all the NES Dragon Quests do that. All the NES Final Fantasies except for 3 do that.
Yeah, and for some reason in this game, I'm fine because I get to play it on a GBA one-handed while I'm parenting. I don't care. I'll put up with any amount of bullshit, apparently. I was even playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on GBA.
One-handed?
No, that one I did need 2 hands. But in my head, I was like, I have a GPD XD with the PlayStation version of this game loaded and charged next to me.
Right.
Why am I playing the Game Boy cartridge of it?
Because it's on a Game Boy.
The answer is that it's because it's on a Game Boy. And it is an oddly impressive port for a Game Boy game. Anyway, that's it. That's all I've been playing this week. It's just Golden Sun every day, all day.
Nice. So a little while back, you brought me your PVM.
I did. Yes, we did a trade.
We did an exchange of the PVM for a fistful of Game Boy games.
It was more than a fistful, but I did get a bunch of Game Boy games from you.
Yeah. And so I have been playing with that. Now, unfortunately, I have not yet gotten my adapter. I had ordered a BNC to Euroscart adapter so that I could plug in my RGB modded Super NES and TurboGrafx in there. But it keeps getting delayed. The post office assures me it'll be here any day now.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I at least have, all the other connections on there that I can use. And so naturally, I have exclusively been playing Phantasy Star Online on it.
Yep. Excellent.
Like you do. So yeah, I've got my GameCube plugged in there. I hooked it up to the internets so that I could play with you. And then we played like one time and have not coordinated since.
haven't had time.
Right.
I'm still I was having a good time with PSO. Yeah. I'm excited to play some more of it. There are still fan servers out there. I realized that I hacked my Wii and got all my GameCube stuff working right after our last recording session. So I don't know that I've talked about it on the show.
True,
but
there's one major fan server that everybody uses.
Yeah.
And it is still available, and you can play any version of the game as long as you can connect to an internet connection. You can play it there. And no, the GameCube version is still my favorite version to play of all of them. And my memory card got corrupted, so I no longer have my level 120 something character anymore.
Yeah.
So I had to start over from scratch. I'm back to level 22 now. I'm into hard mode, like I should be by this level.
Yeah.
So I'm plugging away, trying to get back to where I was. I hope someday to have a cool looking mag again. I miss that.
I have to say, I don't even totally remember why I booted PSO back up. I think because I was just like, does the online work? And I did it, and I was like, it does.
Yeah.
And I was playing it, and I've the last time we played it, I didn't love it, and for some reason this time it's kind of hooked me because it's it feels very much like Diablo. It's that same type of gameplay loop feedback that I get from Diablo.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the few games of that style that I have particularly gotten into, and I very much got into it. So,
yeah, it's been a good time. Let's knock some news out.
Yeah.
First up, Pokemon Go surpasses 3.6 billion with a B lifetime revenue.
Dollars. $3.6 billion. Not like 3.6 billion units
3.6 billion Pokemon. I don't even and is celebrating its 4-year anniversary. $3.6 billion.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. That's $1 for just about every other person on the planet.
My God.
Yeah.
That's just a tremendously insane amount of money. That has to be some of the most money a single game has ever made ever in the history of anything. But at the same time, I know the mobile game market is just filled full of these same stories. Right. So I can't even imagine the amount of money Clash of Clans has made. It's probably it's got to be in the billions.
Yeah.
Next up, Monster Farm 2 being the Japanese version of Monster Rancher 2, which is a very good game and touted as the best Monster Rancher game in the series. Was announced for Switch, iOS, and Android.
Yes, at least in
word.
Japan.
Yeah, no word on a release outside of Japan. I'm hoping there is.
Right.
Monster Rancher was the thing here in the U.S. for a little while.
How would it work though? Because there's no disc port on any of those devices.
See, everyone keeps saying that, but here's the thing about the disc port. First of all, fans have already modded the CD reading out of Monster Rancher 2. It's been gone for years for people that play the game.
Why would you do that?
Because when you put a CD in, all it really does is generate a random seed number.
Based on the metadata, though.
Yeah, but you could generate a random seed number off of anything.
Right, but it was a disc.
You could just type in the name of your favorite type of pizza, and it could generate a seed off of that.
Or you could put pizza in your disk drive.
Like when you do, when you don't understand what it's doing, you think it's magically creating a monster from the music you put in. But when you understand what it's doing, it's like, oh, it's just a random number generator. It just chose to do it this goofy way because it was gimmicky and fun. Like, you know.
I knew what it was doing then, and it still seems super interesting. I was like, oh, it's just reading some metadata and generating that. That's amazing.
So, yeah, it's been modded out of Monster Rancher 2 for a while now. I imagine they're going to probably use whatever system that has already been in place for it.
It's unfortunate.
Polymega announces delays.
What?
I know. I'm shocked. I'm shocked as well.
I'm devastated.
But they're totally still coming this fall.
Oh, good.
Definitely still going to release this fall to compete with the Atari 800 VCS, the Xbox One X, and the PlayStation 5.
Perfect.
Just going to nail it
Xbox
right out of the
Series
park.
X.
Also probably to compete with the Analog Pocket. Is probably going to be out later this year, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
So if you want to buy a video game system, 2020 is the year. Allegedly, there's going to be several of them.
Yeah, and at least 2 of them are going to be actual successes.
Hey, slow down. Analog Pocket might do okay.
Yeah, it might, if it comes out this year.
True. So I again, like we said when the Polymega was announced, I want the Polymega to succeed and do well.
I originally did.
Yeah, I did until it came out that they were giant assholes.
Yeah.
But as a product, I like the idea and I want the product to succeed, but
I don't even know if I want the product to succeed in its current form with all the different modules and shit.
Yeah, that's true. When I say that, I forget that all of the FPGA they said they were going to do was a complete and utter lie.
Yeah.
I forget about that. It's easy to forget some of the lies from a company that is full of so many.
I want them to sell all the controllers separately so that I can buy them. That's what I want.
There you go. Switch game Final Sword removed from Japanese eShop for blatantly stealing music from the Legend of Zelda series.
Did you see the video of this?
It also looked like it was stealing character models from Monster Hunter.
Yeah, or maybe from EverQuest 1. I mean, it kind of looked like shit. But yeah,
the
like
eShop bloatware situation is getting a little out of hand.
Yeah, and also apparently their quality control is disappeared.
Lacking. Yeah. It was bound to happen eventually, I guess. Although you can go on any mobile phone store, the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, and find tons of games that rip off Breath of the Wild.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're looking for that, then you can enjoy it there.
Right. Yeah, there's still an option for you.
Microsoft pressures publishers to make Xbox One to Xbox Series X upgrades free. Puts blocks in place to prevent publishers from charging for an upgrade as DLC, which is some interesting pro-consumer moves from Microsoft.
I'm still just waiting for the other shoe to fall.
I'm glad to see him doing it, yeah, but at the same time, every single game company on Earth is going to be like, no, fuck you.
Well, a couple of them have said that they are going to cooperate with that and use this upgrade system, at least for their initial games.
I'm just not convinced. I remain unconvinced.
Like CD Projekt was the first company that was like, "Oh yeah, we're on board with that." Of course they were,
because CD Projekt is great.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't
well, their customer facing side is great.
They're great for the consumer.
Yes.
Maybe don't work people so hard.
Right.
Nintendo releases The Immortal on NES and Natsume Championship Wrestling on SNES and Donkey Kong Country on SNES on Nintendo Switch Online. Japan is receiving, and by extension the rest of the world, because you can download the Japanese version of this program, receiving Shin Megami Tensei instead of The Immortal.
So they're getting 3 Super NES games.
Yes.
And we're getting 1 NES and 2 Super NES. Now, I wonder...
What the hell is The Immortal?
Oh, it was a point-and-click adventure. Now, my question is, does this count as one of those 10 games that EA said they were going to put out on Switch this year? Were they counting the NES port of The Immortal? Because I bet they were.
Obviously, yes. I'm continue to be disappointed by Nintendo Switch Online.
Yep.
Like, just it makes me mad. First of all, the fact that every first-party Nintendo game is not on it, they can fuck off with that. Just put it on there.
Yeah, the fact that that Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3 haven't been released yet, but The Immortal for NES made its way in.
Don't forget Project Doom.
Yeah, Vice Project Doom.
Yeah, Vice Project Doom. My gosh.
What was the Eliminator Boat Duel? Yeah, that made it in.
Which those are both supposedly fun games, but like, I'd rather have, Donkey Kong Country 2.
Right. Or Earthbound. Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Konami shutting down servers for Castlevania Grimoire of Souls on September 9th, never having released it outside of Canada.
Yeah. Well, Japan and Canada.
Okay. I was like,
it's
just
one of those,
Canada?
It's one of those Canadian-Japanese ventures.
Yes.
Very common.
Yes. Very common these days.
Yeah. So yeah, they had released it in Japan, and then a month or two later, they released an English version in Canada, claiming that it was a dry run for a worldwide release. And then, 10 months later, they were just like, "Nah, we're done now. It's over." And they never bothered to release it anywhere else.
Can't miss it if we never had it.
Right? It's apparently okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's apparently an okay game. But it did have a bunch of microtransactions in it that are completely optional. Like, you can still fully enjoy the game and max out your character's stats without ever using a microtransaction. Because the microtransactions were designed for the multiplayer mode, which is garbage and nobody could even play because it wasn't released in most of the world.
I'm okay with them doing that.
Right?
Limited Run Games holds E3 style event and announces several physical releases, including Grandia HD Collection, Castlevania Anniversary Collection, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, and Curse of the Moon 2, as well as a Game Boy Color reprint of Shantae, accompanied by a digital physical re-release on Switch. So lots. The list was like 30 games long.
Yeah, something like that.
If you are into limited run games, then go check it out, because there's a ton of stuff there.
Now, my question is, will the Switch release of Shantae, of the GBC version, have that extra thing you could get by plugging it into a GBA?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
We will have to wait and see.
Right?
I'm interested on the reproduction quality of the GBC cart, because Game Boy Color cartridges are usually half-sized PCBs when you look at bootlegs. So I'm curious to see where they're sourcing their parts from and how good the reproduction is.
Yeah.
They previously did Star Wars on Game Boy, which I didn't get because one, it was $90, and two, I already own Star Wars on Game Boy and already don't like it.
Yeah, it's not a good game to begin with.
Yeah, but I'm curious.
Right.
Canceled Amiga shmup Shenandoah ported to Switch as 1993 Shenandoah, which it looks nuts.
Yeah, it looks crazy. I might have to give it a shot.
Same. Tetris Mobile adds Battle Royale and Game Show modes.
Yeah, if you download the app, which one don't. If you do, it instead of just starting out by letting you play Tetris and showing you how to play Tetris, it starts out with like a 7-minute video where this dude who hosts the new game show mode tries to really convince you should play the game show mode where you'll totally get real money if you win. And then he tells you all about the Battle Royale mode, which sounds like it's just Tetris 99 adapted to mobile. And then he happens to mention, or you can just play, like regular Tetris like you have all your life. And then it finally lets you exit out of that video or watch it repeat forever to get to a menu. And when you finally start the game, you realize it doesn't even have gamepad support. So it's just touchscreen Tetris.
Well, I have a backlit Game Boy Color now, so I don't need this shit.
I'm
just going to go play regular Tetris. Or the far superior Tetris 99, available now.
On Switch.
Epic receives strategic investment from Sony, that being Epic Games, and it's a lot of money. It was a very big investment from Sony. Right. So that's a thing that's happening.
We'll see what happens there.
Capcom announces that 80% of their sales are coming from digital games and that the number is rising.
That
Probably
worries me.
Shocking no one. Yeah.
I'm really worried about that.
I'm a little worried too. But right now, all I'm buying is Game Boy games, so I don't give a shit. I can just ignore all of it. Nintendo of America originally... Nintendo of America originally considered localizing Pikachu, yes, Pikachu, as a, quote, tiger with huge breasts.
Yes. So this was original research done by the YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming. Yes. They did an interview with several of the original localizers of the Pokemon franchise from around the world, and the American localization team, or the American localizer, the translator, informed them that they originally had all new designs for the monsters outside of Japan, so they wouldn't be so cute. And the Pikachu was a tiger with huge breasts. And
our Discord immediately started making jackass Miyamoto jokes of Miyamoto just being like, hey, what if Pikachu was like a titty tiger? Like a tiger with some big old titties. Get a tiger, put big old titties on it. It's Pikachu.
Right. Like, that's what Pikachu is. What?
Get Capcom on the phone. They can do it.
Yeah, apparently Game Freak vetoed that. They were like, okay, you can change some things. You cannot change the design of the monsters. So thank you, Game Freak.
Although I really want Titty Tiger Pikachu.
At least want to see the sketch.
Have there been fan versions of it yet? Because
it's only been days. Give them time.
Bowsette took off immediately, but I don't have Titty Tiger Pikachu yet. I'm
Give
upset.
It time. Soon, Justin.
Very upset. And then finally, Nintendo hints at a new console in an investor meeting.
Nothing specific, just that there will eventually be one. Not like these are the things we're working on.
Shocking nobody.
Yeah.
Of course they're working on a new console.
Well, they didn't even say they were specifically working on it. They were just saying, these are the lessons we want to take from the Switch into the next console. And then immediately every news organization was like, oh, a new console.
They've announced it. It's coming.
Yeah.
So let's get on the topic at hand. This week we're talking Hidden Gems PlayStation. We've not done a Hidden Gems episode in a while. We did 2 of them back to back and then none for like a year.
3 years.
2 years. 3 years. But we back then we had come up with the idea of, hey, let's do some different types of shows and come up with some new episode formats. And Hidden Gems was one we wanted to keep doing, and we never did it again.
So we're really good at that.
So to summarize, this episode is going to be just some of our favorite PS1 games that maybe you haven't heard of.
And if you have, sorry.
Yes, sorry. If you have, just think about Titty Tiger Pikachu until you forget, and then rewind and listen to it again.
Just imagine that you went to the store with your mom and you're like, hey, I really want to get this Monster Rancher game. Oh, what is it? Well, it's pretty much Pokemon, but with Titty Tiger Pikachu.
I mean, they'd have to put a bra on it, right?
I assume like it was wearing a leotard or something. That's my assumption.
Okay. That makes, well, it doesn't make any sense, but makes sense, more sense than naked boobies.
Right, yeah. That doesn't seem a very Nintendo of America thing to do.
Just as a note, listener feedback we've kept till the end just to reduce any overlap between our picks and listener picks, although I think there's actually none.
Oh, nice.
But I still put it there anyway, so
all right.
It's going to be at the end. As far as scope, I do want to kind of give some excuses for our lists. So this was really hard, very hard for me. The PS1 is so very well loved and well mined, both through re-releases and backward compatibility all the way up to the PS3, that it's really hard to find much that people haven't heard of without getting like extremely weird.
Right.
So this is
Wait, are you saying that the game LSD Dream Simulator is extremely weird?
It is a little weird. So, and especially when things like Jumping Flash are included on the PlayStation Classic, like, it's hard to get weird with the PS1.
It's true.
So this is kind of more of a list of games that might have been popular at some point in time, but they're just less talked about today.
Things that have faded out a little bit.
Yeah, everyone still talks about your Gran Turismos and your siphon filters and stuff like that, but maybe not a lot of people talk about Croc anymore.
Do people still talk about siphon filter?
So I have one friend that's like, fucking siphon filter's amazing. And I'm like, no, it's not. But, everyone goes on about the Final Fantasies. And then because Final Fantasy was so popular on PlayStation, every JRPG on the PlayStation seems like it was popular. And it was just a very unique system with a huge library that was readily available because they were all just put on discs, So that said... we've also covered a lot of less popular PS1 games on the show, just as topics.
Right.
So we've
several that I would have put on this list had we not covered them already.
Yeah. Like Mr. Driller or like Tactics Ogre that we just did. We've covered a lot of PS1 stuff. Klonoa, would have been great for this list. And we're not going to double back to things we've already done whole episodes on.
Right.
And like I would say every other Hidden Gems episode, but the other two we did 3 years ago, we may not include your favorite game. It's not because you have terrible taste. Please don't be offended.
It might be because you have terrible taste.
It's also, again, hard to know what's hidden and what's not because we're just surrounded by retro game talk all day long.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we tried to pick PlayStation forward titles, games that were either first or concurrently released on PlayStation. But we kind of fudged that a little bit.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Every game that I ended up picking for this list, right before I picked it, I was like, well, everybody knows this game. This is super common. And then I had to stop and think does everybody know this?
I immediately was like, okay, PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy 7, Gran Turismo. Like I couldn't even think of
Metal Gear Solid, Crash Bandicoot, real hidden gems.
There were some JRPGs that I kind of wanted to include, but I didn't have time to play several JRPGs to figure out which ones I would have wanted to include. So I've largely avoided RPGs in my list, which I think is good anyway because the RPG scene on PlayStation 1 is so very well documented that I think it's a good thing.
And I tried to limit my number of JRPGs because I wanted you to still be listening at the end of the episode.
There you go. First up, I have Ghost in the Shell, which was developed by Exact Production IG and published by Sony Computer Entertainment in Japan and European regions and THQ in North America. And this is a third-person action game in which you control a think tank, which are the weird little spider tanks from Ghost in the Shell, named Fuchikoma. And it features the same voice cast as the film, although the story is totally not related at all.
Right.
But it has fully voiced Ghost in the Shell, like old school before Ghost in the Shell got all post standalone complex. For anyone that knows Ghost in the Shell, I was a big fan.
I drove a friend of mine around to 6 or 7 Funcolands to find this game.
Yeah.
And he was so excited. Then he got home, and it's pretty much all he talked to me about for the next 3 weeks.
Well, what I quit watching Ghost in the Shell when in one of the newer series there was product placement for a Microsoft Surface. Someone in the show was using a Surface, and I was like, you can fucking plug directly into the internet with your brain.
Right.
Why would you have a Microsoft Surface? I was so mad.
So convenient.
I immediately, with Microsoft's new Windows 50, it's as convenient as ever to get on the internet. You're already plugged into the internet literally every waking moment with biometric implants. Yeah, but with my Surface, like, I can't even.
Look at how easy it is to use Excel.
It was so stupid. But this game isn't stupid. It's a very fun game. Right. What I love about it is that it's just kind of your standard third-person action game. You've got the tank. You've got two different types of attacks. You've got a machine gun, and you can shoot these big missile things. And you've got a mini-map with your objectives, and you just go around to objectives blowing stuff up. It's just a little, like, third-person run-and-gun. But, like the tanks in the show, you seamlessly transition along all surfaces, walls, ceiling, ground, upside down, every direction. Right. Like if you just like drive directly into a building, you'll just immediately, the whole camera flips and you're going up the building and now you're going on top of the building.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it was the second level especially was this like sewer level, and you would be spinning around so much that by the end of the level, you literally don't know which direction is up. You're like, I have no fucking idea. I'm just like spinning circles in this tunnel, shooting rockets at things. Right. And it's just a blast. I also do love that it features the tanks, the little spider tanks, instead of, you know, just being a generic third-person game
run and
with
gun
the major
game.
Yeah, which it could have been just yet another, siphon filter.
Right.
Which is what I always thought it was, but it's not. You get to play these really cool tanks, and it was a really good time. I had a good time with it. Highly recommend it. It's very hard,
right?
But just a very fun, arcadey, easy to jump into, easy to control game with an interesting gimmick, which is that you just fly all over the place. It's nuts.
Nice.
So highly recommend it. Yeah. I'm sure it's probably tremendously expensive.
I believe it is now. Yes.
But please emulate it. It's a good time.
I'm going to start with a game that you cannot emulate.
Okay. Thanks, Saturn.
Because fuck everybody.
Thanks, buddy.
Now I'm going to start with Elemental Gearbolt, which I've probably mentioned on the show before, and I will probably mention it again because I love this game. It was developed by Alpha System, published by Sony in Japan, Working Designs in the U.S. It is a light gun game with RPG elements that takes place in a fantasy world.
So Snatcher.
No. It immediately got my attention back then because every light gun game was always like basically Time Crisis, Virtua Cop. It was always that like just the year after tomorrow kind of barely post-future sci-fi kind of environment, and then Elemental Gearbolt was like this high fantasy game. And also had RPG elements, and also had a translation by Working Design, so it was goofy. But it's a very interesting and well paced as far as RPG elements go. Also, the main character from it, Tagami, went on to be a secret character in Shikigami no Shiro, or Castle Shikigami, which was Alpha System's more famous series, is the shmup series, which came to the West as Mobile Light Force 2, which we discussed previously when we were talking about Gunbird and its stupid Charlie's Angels cover. Now, another thing, Working Designs held a contest for the game in North America when it first came out to receive an Assassin's Case, which had a gold-plated gun con and a gold-plated memory card, though they eventually ran out of those and had to use red memory cards instead.
Yeah.
And those are ludicrously rare. And
you don't say that a gold-plated gun con is rare.
I know.
And expensive. I'm shocked, Saturn. Blown away.
The last one I could find that sold was around 2003, and it sold for $1,000 then.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So who knows what they would be worth today. It is some fantasy number.
Yeah.
But that is where I am going to start.
Gross.
Yeah.
Game sounds fun though.
Yeah, it's a fun game. It's worth checking out. If you can play an emulator with light gun support, like maybe mouse emulated, it's
would
worth
it
at
be
least
fun
checking
with
out.
mouse emulate? Like, is it one of those things where the light gun elements would be kind of ruined, or would it be okay?
The GunCon 1 didn't have a lot of functionality beyond just shooting, so you may be able to still pull it off. If nothing else, it'll be an interesting thing to check out, if for no other reason than the translation, because it's goofy and fun and everything. But I don't know if it would hold up quite as well without the actual GunCon.
Yeah. My next one is In the Hunt,
Yes.
developed and published by IRIM, and we did discuss it previously on our IRIM episode, but I do think it bears mentioning here. So to reiterate from that episode, it is a horizontal shooter in which you play a submarine, and it features many graphical similarities to Metal Slug, with a lot of people kind of calling it a proto-Metal Slug because it very much plays like one of the vehicle segments in a Metal Slug game.
Right.
And really, if you've played Metal Slug 3, the underwater segment with, the submarine, it very much plays like that. But it's just a really fun side-scrolling, I guess you'd call it a shmup. I want to call it a run and gun because it doesn't feel like a shmup.
Right.
But
it's more
beautifully
of
animated.
a submarine and gun.
Yeah, it's a submarine and gun. There you go. But it also got a port on the Saturn, although allegedly the Saturn version has some issues. I could only really find people talking about this in old forum posts, so it may be apocryphal. But it was a company.
I'm pretty sure
called
old forums are always correct.
Yeah, they have to be, right?
Early
Forums are always right. A company called Sims ported it to PS1 according to Wikipedia, but the box lists Xing Entertainment and Cocopelli. So I don't know who did what, or if maybe those companies just became Sims later.
Yeah.
And there was even a Super Nintendo version that was shown at CES 94 that never came out, I assume because the Super Nintendo just couldn't handle it. I don't imagine how it would.
It would have handled it like garbage.
Yeah, probably. They would have had to cut out almost all of the animation, and it's such a beautifully animated game.
Right.
And I believe the PlayStation version is also superior in that it gives you unlimited continues.
Nice. I love home ports that add stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's a very hard game, so it's worth it. And the full arcade version is also available on Switch and PS4 from Hamster.
Nice.
So you've got it available, although, again, it's not the PlayStation 1 version, but PS1 was the only way to play it for a very long time.
Yeah, in the West especially.
Yeah, but it's very worth picking up. Very fun game.
Nice. So my next one is going to be Valkyrie Profile, because I will talk about Valkyrie Profile at any possible chance that I get.
Now, this is one I've seen all over the place a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I've even tried to start it a couple of times, and for whatever reason, I don't even get past the intro dialogue. Other stuff comes up.
Well, there's a lot of dialogue at the beginning of the game, and I can understand why that would scare you off. That is, it is much more dialogue heavy than you probably would appreciate in an RPG.
I do hate words and talking. So
it was developed by Tri-Ace, published by Enix. And like Tri-Ace's other big series, it has a real-time action-based battle system. So you're not just inputting commands in a menu. You actually have to run back and forth and approach or run from enemies. And holding directions while hitting buttons does different special attacks. The whole game has a Norse mythological influence. And, of course, because it's Tri-Ace, there's this bonus dungeon at the end that is just ludicrously difficult. I don't think it's 100 floors yet. I don't think they started doing that till the next Star Ocean, but it's really just stupidly long and filled with really dumb challenges. But the main game is just wonderful, has an excellent story, and I can't believe that the Enix actually paid to localize it back then because they had no money at all. But there is a PSP remake, which is fine. There's also a mobile remake, which is a mobile game.
Now, is the PS1 version still the go-to version? Because I'd heard the PSP remake was good.
Yeah, it's a fine port. I still prefer the PS1 original. I think the localization is better on the PSP, but I feel like it also slows down a bit compared to the PS1 game.
Yeah, that's fair. My next one is Bushido Blade,
which I almost put on my list.
Developed by Lightweight, published by Square in Japan and Sony Computer Entertainment in non-Japanese regions.
Right.
And after I added it on the list, I was like, I don't know, this game seems like it was pretty popular, and I looked it up, and it's the 25th best-selling PlayStation game of all time.
Yeah.
But to justify it being on this list, one, it's really good.
Yeah.
And two, it does kind of feel like people have forgotten it over the years. Right. It was a big deal when it came out, but the lack of support and continued sequels it's stranded on PS1.
Right.
Now,
if I remember right, some of the developers left Square after the second game and went on to make a semi-successor series after that never really got any traction.
Yeah. But it is a weapon-based 3D tournament fighter with what the game calls the body damage system, in which certain limbs can be damaged and affect a player's ability to move. So you can have your legs damaged, so you're having to like crawl around, or an arm damaged, so that you're not able to defend yourself.
Right.
Famously, the game has no health bar,
right,
no time limit, and almost all really solid hits to the core of your opponent cause instant death.
And that makes it a great game for if you're the kind of player that just likes to run away from your competitor.
It's just really so much fun. One of the things I love about the Samurai Showdown series is that because all the hits in Samurai Showdown are really big, like a couple bad hits and you're out of the game.
Right.
It creates this very realistic tension of like, if you were fighting two dudes with a sword, they're not going to be hacking away at each other like Soul Calibur shows it.
Right.
They're going to be like, no, one good hit with that and I'm toast. I'm going to be careful.
Right.
And Bushido Blade really embodies that.
Oh yeah.
And also has a stellar soundtrack. It's so much fun to play. I love the body damage system. I'm disappointed that other weapon-based fighters like Soul Calibur don't really do that.
Right. And the sequel is pretty solid too.
Like, the sequel's also great.
I don't think it's quite as good as the first one, but it was still pretty solid.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
I have so much fun playing that game. Also, really easy fighting game to just kind of jump into, because most of the strategy is standing there doing nothing, and then you sprint at each other, and whoever hits the button first. Like, that's just
pretty much
how it works.
So next, I kind of stretched a bit. I was trying to find something that might actually not be on people's regular list. So I went for Xanac Cross Xanac.
So it's Xanac.
Yeah, pretty much. Developed and published by Compile. It was only released in Japan initially, but it has since been re-released on PSN internationally. So if you have a PS3 or a PSP or a PS Vita, you can pick it up. Mm-hmm. It is a collection that has the original NES Xanac, Compile's old NES shooter, but it also has a new game called Xanac Neo, which is an updated version of the NES game that is fair, unlike the NES game.
Right, which is just an arcade style.
Essentially. But it adds not only new graphics, but a lot of just quality of life improvements. The game didn't come out in Japan, I want to say, until 2000 or 2001, so right around the PS2 launch. So it was a really late PS1 game. Mm-hmm. But it is a ton of fun. I have had a totally legal burned copy for at least 15 years now. And it's one that I do go to every now and then if I'm just looking for just a simple, basic play for a little bit shooter. So it is
right.
It is fun. It is a very, very retro style, but it is still worth checking out if you like Compile's space shooters.
Which you should, because they're good.
Yes, especially Blazing Lasers and Guardian Legend, and they put out a ton of good stuff.
My next one is another pretty. I felt like this game was very popular, but I also feel like I don't know. It is Digimon World.
Yes. What is that?
Developed and published by Bandai with help from Flying Tiger Development for the U.S. port. And it did sell well enough to become a greatest hits title. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of seems like it's largely forgotten outside of Digimon fans. Digimon as a property, as the GoBots to Pokemon's Transformers, has really evolved away from the Digimon World format into this, like the newest game is Cyber Sleuth, and it's just a very different type of game.
Let me ask you this. How many large-chested tiger Pikachus are there?
So far, none.
Oh, well,
I've not run into one, but I'm holding out hope for a titty chew. It's going to happen. But what I love about it is when this came out, Digimon hadn't evolved into the slick modern anime thing that it is now. Digimon was still that show that was based on those keychain virtual pets that fight each other, right? And this game is very much like the video game version extrapolated from these keychain virtual pets that fight each other. Yeah, so like in the game, you're a young boy that gets sucked into his Digimon keychain and has to raise Digimon while exploring the world. So you've got a Digimon following you, you got to feed it, and you got to take it to the toilet, and you got to put it down for naps. And then it also fights other Digimon. So it's very much just the keychains, but in a big like open world exploration game.
Yeah, the only Digimon I even know of is the little like orangish robot dinosaur, maybe?
Yes, Agumon.
That's the only thing I know of Digimon.
But it's really fun. And unlike Pokemon, it's it's centered around caring for your Digimon, and the battles themselves are really hands-off. You can give them some guidance and activate their special moves, but for the most part, it's battles that they're fighting each other. So how well you've raised your Digimon is how well it does against these other Digimon. And fans do seem to prefer later entries and recent Digimon games, like, again, Cyber Sleuth, and have veered away from this very weird, goofy 90s aesthetic that Digimon originally had. And so in comparison to where it is now, the first game feels really quaint, but it's a lot of fun. For a long time, I used to get frustrated that Pokemon wasn't really about raising monsters. It was more about playing a JRPG with a really big cast, you know? For me, I liked the idea of like, oh, I got this little like monster and I have to treat it like a pet and feed it and everything. It also fights stuff and transforms into a giant flaming T-Rex robot. That's cool. But, the caring for the pet thing was the part that I was there for.
Yeah, that's the part that I absolutely did not want.
Right, because you're heartless and cold and can't love a poor, cute little Agumon. I understand.
Correct. Yes, all that's right.
But this one gave a lot of personalities to all the different Digimon. It was very focused on taking care of your animals. And because I was playing Cyber Sleuth, I know I talked about it in recent episodes, and I fell out of it because, I'm raising Digimon, but I'm really just playing a generic JRPG and sometimes dealing with raising Digimon. Like, no, I want to be scooping poop. That's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be doing Poke Battles. I want to be over there taking them to the toilet and buying them dinner. I don't know why. It's because I'm insane. Obviously, it's popular. Other people like this kind of stuff, too.
I want to see Justin's dating profile where it's like, I will take you to dinner and then clean you up after the toilet.
I'll put you down for a nap and then fight you against another girlfriend.
That's pretty much it. It's either Digimon or Tinder. It's pretty much the same thing, right?
Anyway, no Digimon game has grabbed me as much as Digimon World, the first one. Really is a great game, even though I do feel like it was pretty popular in the lineup.
Do you know if it's on PSN?
I don't think it is, because I remember having to hack it onto my PSP.
Okay. Fair enough.
But I'm not. That was a while back, so it might have been added since then. I'm not sure.
So next, I'm going to go with Chocobo Racing, which is also a game I'll recommend at any chance I get. Developed and published by Square. It is obviously a kart racer based on, not off of Final Fantasy directly, but off of the Chocobo's Dungeon spin-off series of Final Fantasy, which is, of course, part of the Mystery Dungeon series that Chunsoft made.
I never played this because I always assumed, because I had a friend that like knew about it,
right?
Because it really was not very popular. It didn't seem like. But I always assumed it was just straight up the Chocobo racing segments from Final Fantasy VII, but their own game. And
no, it is
nope,
not at
that.
all that. No, this is a legit kart racer. It is similar-ish to Mario Kart 64, I would say, which means it's dated by today's standards. But compared to the other kart racers of that time, I thought it actually stood out pretty well. I thought it was much better than Crash Team Racing, and that probably just made some people angry, but I don't care because I loved it. One of the neat things about it was instead of picking up random item boxes, there would be these little magic spheres. They may have even called them materia based on FF7. But there were these little magic spheres, and say while you were driving around, you picked up a blizzard sphere. Well, if you didn't use it and you came across another blizzard sphere, then you could grab that too, and suddenly you have a Blizzara sphere. And then you could grab a third and get a Blizzaga. And by the time they were powered up to level 3, they were devastatingly powerful, and they could just really tear up some people. And all the little power-ups are based on Final Fantasy spells, but applied to a kart racer so that they would still make sense within the environment. Also, it has a ton of great remixes of classic Final Fantasy music, mostly from the first 4 or 5 games, it feels like, but there's a couple from 7 and 8. And there are some hidden characters that you can unlock, like Bahamut and for some reason Squall from Final Fantasy VIII, and also an 8-bit airship. And
you can be an airship riding a chocobo?
No, you don't ride chocobos. Only Chocobo himself is a chocobo. Everybody else is just like on a bike or on a car.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
All these years, I thought chocobo racing was chocobos racing.
No. You can play as Chocobo if you wish. He is a character.
God damn it.
He is the main character.
I want to play this.
Oh, it's great. It's a great game. If you play as the Black Mage, you ride around on a little cloud, and it's adorable.
I want it.
It's great. The whole thing is chibi-style graphics, just like the Chocobo's Dungeon series is.
Yeah.
It reuses all the characters introduced in Chocobo's Dungeon 2. Just really great. However, those hidden characters are broken as shit. Their stats are just dumb. Like, I think Squall's max speed is like double anybody else's. So, like, he can easily lap everybody. It's not fun or fair, especially Bahamut. He is the worst because he flies the whole time and is immune to all ground-based environment hazards. So he'll just fly over everything. It's not fun to play against him.
Yeah.
But if you're playing as him, that's great. That's a great time.
My final one here is Tornado, The Last Hope.
Love that game.
Which was recommended to me by you and is one of my more recent go-to PlayStation games. It was developed by Chunsoft and Matrix Software, published by Enix, and it's kind of your standard mystery dungeon roguelike style game, except you play a fat merchant from a Dragon Quest game. You play Tornado Taloon, who is the merchant from Dragon Quest IV.
Yes.
And it's just a really good, really fun mystery dungeon game, of which I believe there are several on the PlayStation.
Outside of Japan, there is the 2. There is that I know of. There's Chocobo's Dungeon 2 and Tornado.
Yeah,
I don't think any of the Shirens for PS1 came out over here.
I just like it because you're just playing this like fat, goofy, mustachioed merchant guy. It's something about it is just charming to me. I don't know what it is that makes it so extra charming.
Right.
But he makes the game.
Yes.
And I was curious about the game's development. And I found this from a US Gamer article, and they stated, quote, according to comments made on the Something Awful forums by one of the game's directors, Doug Dinsdale, Last Hope only saw a US release because the localization team was so passionate about it that they agreed to work for a substantially reduced rate.
I believe that.
So it's a good game. It's a very fun mystery dungeon game. If you like mystery dungeon style roguelike games, it's a good one.
The cover is so stupid.
What is?
The cover.
Oh yeah, it's a dumb cover.
The cover art is so dumb. Sure. I am shocked.
It's real dumb looking.
I'm shocked anyone besides me bought it because of how bad that cover is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a totally solid game. Love that game. And my last one, which is apparently on everyone's hidden gems list for PlayStation ever.
I've seen this one a lot.
Since forever, is Einhander. And it used to be that game that I would pull out and no one would have known what it was. It was one of the few PS1 games that no matter who I was talking to, I'd be like, oh, and then we could play Einhander. And they would be confused, and I would say, oh, it's from Square, and they would be interested. Or I would say, oh, it's a shmup, and they would be interested. But never would they be interested in both of those things at once. But it's surprisingly good. It is a 2.5D shmup, phenomenal soundtrack, a bunch of different weapons you can get, and you can trade them back and forth between the different little hands on your ship. Despite the fact that it's called Einhander, so it should only have one weapon, I would think, based on the name alone. But But no, it's solid. If you haven't played it, go play it. As far as PS1 shmups go, it's worth checking out.
Yeah. As far as honorable mentions, before we jump into our listener recommendations, yes. I highly recommend Pocket Fighter and Puzzle Fighter on PlayStation. Yes. I didn't put them on my list because they're Capcom games based on Street Fighter properties. I feel like they were probably pretty well known.
I played Puzzle Fighter way more on arcade than I did on Saturn than I did on PS1. But Pocket Fighter, I played a shit ton of on my PS1.
Pocket Fighter is a blast. What a fun. I wish I knew about that game years ago. What a fun little chibi Street Fighter game. So much fun.
You can just knock the gems out of somebody and then turn into Mega Man and hit him with a sign.
And then, we already mentioned it, but Bushido Blade 2, most definitely Bushido Blade 2. It's also very good, just like the original.
The honorable mentions I have, Silhouette Mirage I would have mentioned, but it was on the Saturn first. But it's still excellent. It's basically Ikaruga if it was a platformer. A lot of fun there. Klonoa, but we already did a full episode on it. Tobal number 1 I would have mentioned if it didn't suck so bad. Mm-hmm. Rival Schools was technically an arcade game first, just like Pocket Fighter and Puzzle Fighter is just a Capcom arcade fighter. But it's a really fun Capcom arcade fighter. It's a 3D fighter based on 2 high schools fighting each other, and one of them happens to have Sakura as a student.
She's got to go to school somewhere, Saturn. Give her a break.
Right, yeah. She has to do something in between international street fighting tournaments. I also would have mentioned No One Can Stop Mr. Domino if I hated everybody that listened to this show and wanted them to play terrible games.
Last time we mentioned No One Can Stop Mr. Domino this episode, I'm afraid to tell you.
I know. And then also Brave Fencer Musashi and Vagrant Story. Also almost made my list, but I didn't just want to have a list full of Squaresoft titles. Right. So I decided to push those off. But they are both worth checking out at least if you haven't.
I also almost listed that one tournament fighter that included Final Fantasy VII characters.
Guys.
Yes, I didn't because the game sucks, but it's so interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
I
think
weird.
you can play as either Cloud or Tifa, or maybe both in Tobal number 2 as well. But really? Tobal 2 didn't come out outside of Japan.
Yeah. Let's get into our listener recommendations. Our listener feedback. Rygar Starkon writes in, says, I don't know if these would truly be considered hidden, but I've never heard anyone talk about them, so I assume they're not widely known. First up, I got to give my all-time favorite quirky platformer, Skull Monkeys. Wacky claymation world of Neverhood returns as Clayman takes a bunch of monkeys with skulls on their heads.
Takes on.
Takes on. Pardon me. I can't read. It's kitschy and fun. Highly recommended. I've also got to give a shout out to the X-Files on PS1 because who didn't want to play as an agent searching for Mulder and Scully in the same timeline that places you roughly in the middle of the 3rd season?
I didn't because I really wanted to play as Mulder and Scully and was frustrated and brought it back to the Blockbuster.
Skull Monkeys I have seen recommended a few times on these lists. Elk Neodafs says, for hidden PlayStation gems, I have to tip my hat to the Colony Wars trilogy. After Wing Commander 3 graced my 3DO in 95, nothing else seemed to scratch my itch for space combat sims until Colony Wars on PS1.
Nice.
Each entry in the trilogy is fantastic. Missions usually take place in space, but will occasionally be on the planet's surface, and the game is bravely political. Its lore goes deep and has different endings.
Nice.
The PS1 had several gems, but Colony Wars is one of my favorites.
Very nice.
TamChan87 says, I used to say that Grandia was an amazing hidden gem on PS1, but it's since had a lovely HD re-release, and so I would say London Sayray Tantaden takes the crown.
I don't think that's even close.
He put in a pronunciation guide. He says, for Justin, pronunciation is London Sayray Tantadan. There you go.
All right.
London Sayray Tantadan is an amazing JRPG with gorgeous art. It looks and plays a bit similar to Breath of Fire 4, but set in Victorian England with a Sherlock Holmes story.
Nice.
An almost Sherlock Holmes story. Unfortunately, it hasn't been translated, but it's worth bumbling through with a walkthrough. In English, I would recommend Vagrant Story.
Right.
It's not exactly hidden, but it definitely doesn't get anywhere near the recognition it deserves.
Right.
IG Amazing Bob says, as a kid, we would go to Best Buy once a month, and I would pick one game to buy. One day, nothing stood out except this one that had cover art of a running domino.
Oh, no. Turn back. It's not too late.
I had no idea what it was, except that I had to play it. That day I took home No One Can Stop Mr. Domino and instantly fell in love. It's charming, quirky, fun, unique, and addictive. I played for weeks until I unlocked everything. I've never mentioned it until a year or so ago when I discovered a podcast called Retro Warriors. Imagine my excitement when one of the hosts brought up Mr. Domino, one of my favorite childhood games. Saturn then proceeded to shit all over it.
And I'll do it again.
Saturn is wrong. Mr. Domino is a fantastic hidden gem that everyone should enjoy. To this day, it is still the greatest action running domino game ever created.
I'll give you that.
Shebang Bin Bash writes in, while not exactly hidden gems, I would like to give a shout out to the various arcade collections that were released on the system.
Nice.
The Namco Museum releases were instrumental in making the original arcade versions of many classic games available to the general public. I know I never would have been able to play Bosconian without them. Nice. Arcade's Greatest Hits, the Atari collection, contains not only excellent ports of the original arcade versions of Asteroids, Tempest, Centipede, and other games, but a wonderful series of behind-the-scenes videos with the original creators.
Nice.
Finally, Williams Arcade's Greatest Hits brought classic hits such as Joust, Robotron 2084, and Saturn's favorite, Sinistar, to broader audiences. Robotron in particular plays very nicely on a DualShock controller. The original PlayStation was the first console since the Neo Geo to effectively realize the dream of playing arcade-perfect ports at home.
Yes, and a lot of those games that were on the PS1 Namco museums have not seen a re-release since. So there are some that are kind of locked there.
So that's a whole boatload of stuff for you to hack onto your PlayStation Classic.
Yeah.
And enjoy, except the one weird light gun game Saturn recommended. That's going to be tricky, but you'll figure it out.
It's going to be rough.
I'm sure. In conclusion, the PS1 had too many games. The end.
That's all the PlayStation games.
All of the unknown games.
Now there's what, like 1,400 games on PS1, something like that?
14 or 1,500. It's an insanely huge library.
So there's a lot of hidden gems. Not all of them are... okay, there's a lot of hidden games, but not very many of them are gems. So
there you go.
It's a little tough to find great games on the PlayStation that also aren't celebrated games. Just because of how popular the system was.
For sure, and continues to be. And because, again, the PS1 really kind of stuck around all the way up through PS3. You can still play PS1 games on your PS3.
Yeah.
So it's just, and then PlayStation Classics have been pretty good, the PlayStation Network has been pretty good about, releasing PlayStation 1 games. It's all been very available and very well-mined, but there's a lot of games for you to go check out.
Right.
Except apparently no one can stop Mr. Domino unless you're Bob.
Yeah.
Now I want to play it because I have to know who's right. I have to know.
Hey, go ahead. Do it.
Anyway, it is that time of the month where we thank all of the lovely people that support us over at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where they get all the cool things like our spin-off shows and our uncut episodes and awesome things that you can have too.
Right.
And you can also make us read whatever you write.
Which is totally your legal name.
Yes.
Definitely.
So without further ado, we would like to thank the following patrons. A 3-boobied woman from Total Recall.
If only she was a tiger Pikachu. Adam Williams.
A discontinued cigarette.
Alex.
Alistair Downs.
Amarlian.
Anders Dalkvist.
Angle Zebra.
Sphincter says what?
What? Austin Wheeler.
Billy Richardson.
Blaster Keaton.
Brandon Johnson.
Brian Kim.
Brian Guido Hassin.
Burger Champ.
Buy me Bone Storm or go to hell.
Captain Koloth.
Casey McGinty.
Chris Hickson.
Chris Minochi.
Chris Ruppersberg.
Hold on, I have to move my PDF. That's not a name. I had to move my PDF. Chuck Angeline.
Cocolicious Crisp.
Cookie Puss.
Cookie Puss. I think that was puss, not pus.
Oh, Cookie Puss.
Gross. Copious amounts of drugs. No, I think that was a contributor to the Monkey Ball episode.
Oh. Craig C.
Chris Forbes.
Dadcore.
David Martin.
Dr. Jason Tharp.
Dig Duggy.
David Nethery.
Ebucel.
Edward Majewski Jr.
Eric G.
Floopy Noopy Noops Esquire.
FreeCodeCamp.org Quincy Larson.
Fry Skungen.
Garrett Roberts.
Gary Heather.
Gary Harris.
George McBain.
Gold Leader.
Grady Haynes.
Our producer, Guy.
Harry Pry.
Hey, would you cuddle me?
Hi, Ross.
I hate Trog.
I'm not going to say this name.
But you did. Ivan Cervantes.
Evelyn Belchev.
Jackass Miyamoto.
Jacob Zagella.
Jason Frudnick and his frog Fred.
J-Dub the Gamer.
John Fry.
Jurgen.
Justin made me buy 2 CRTs.
Carl.
Keith Courage, a.k.a. TurboGrafx fan.
Keith Reynolds.
Kevin Meyer.
Keokilla.
Lachlan Heatherton.
Leo Lobato.
Let us cling 6 feet apart while dressed as beekeepers.
Logan Sharp.
Mark Meredith.
Martin Burke.
Metroid Prime.
Metroidvania is a genre. God damn it.
Oh, I'm so glad that fell on you. Mika Dutro.
Michael Castro.
Michael Hawes.
Michael Cabetti.
Michael Winters.
Mike Morse.
Millie's homemade ice cream is the best ever.
M. Pitts.
Mr. Jiggyfly.
Neil Hayes.
Nick Brown.
Nick Mellon.
Novocaine FS.
Please fart firmly and clearly into the mic.
If you insist. Pogs are back.
Poo Pass.
Puff Puff, please.
Retro Video Game Zone, Jason.
Retro Warriors is proudly sponsored by Ito's Fuck Toast. Start your day fucking great with some great fucking toast.
Retro Gamer Randomness.
Rick Jackson.
Rob Powers.
Robert Fusco.
Robert Vieira Jr.
Scott Page.
Sean S.
Sharp Cheddar.
Sean Gavin.
Sean Schaller.
Spokes.
Sponsored by Honest Bob's Dildo and Butt Plug Emporium.
Steve Duke.
STG, the Mr. Guy.
Suffer UM.
The captain of a ship is in charge of the ship.
The Techno Funk Boy.
The New Craft.
The Watt 624.
Tiger Driver.
Todd Bass.
Tima Hughes.
Uwe Ball.
Video Rangers Podcast.
Vitamin Day.
We are having issues, Justin. I think we need a counselor.
What is a name? A miserable little pile of letters?
While I listen to your podcast, I touch myself.
William Owens.
You and your friends are dead. Game over.
Yugi, you don't stand a chance against my Blue Eyes Ultimate Venus.
God damn it. Zach, huge thanks.
And Zach Huge Thighs
God damn it.
are all the lovely people who support us at patreon.com/Retro Warriors.
Clearly lovely people who would never make us say terrible, terrible things.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always,
let us cling together.